remember one time I was in like early years, like kindergarten. I looked at the teacher, maybe she shouted at me, and she became blind.
What?
They get me, put me in a cave with dead bodies, lock it for 3 days and 3 nights. Now, because of the people who were praying around him, he could ascend in the spirit and become like an authority. She hits me in the pad, and she's not saying a word, just looked at me. Then I knew now it's battle. Because I had never encountered such kind of power.
Welcome to Prayer Storm TV. Today we're going to be going into one of the deepest testimonies I have come across as it pertains to deliverance from the occult and witchcraft. And I'm so excited about this testimony. I came across this man in 2017, and this testimony radically impacted my life. Now, I've got a background. I'm half Ghanaian and half Nigerian. And with the kind of background I have, some of you who are watching have similar background to me. You're probably Nigerian or Ghanaian or African. You would have heard testimonies of people that have been delivered from the occult, of had encounters with Jesus and shared of how Jesus delivered them. And I've heard many of these sort of testimonies. However, this one we're about to hear, in my opinion, is one of the most intense and deep I've come across. And I believe God's going to use this testimony to impact you in a significant way. So I want you to stay tuned. Now, our guest today, we actually had to fly him all the way from Uganda to capture this testimony. Because when I heard this many years ago, I was so impacted. I got connected with him, and we've been relating for a few years. And the Lord made it possible for us to be able to get him over to Manchester. So for the first time, it's his first time in the UK, and I'm excited that we're going to get to hear from him today. So would you welcome with me, James Kawaya from Uganda. James, it's good to have you in Manchester.
Amen. I thank God that I'm here. And this is my first time to be in the UK. And the timing of the Lord is the best. I know this is the first time also I'm recording my testimony in its fullness. Most have been sharing in different platforms, but this is the first time I'm sitting in a recording to share my life testimony. So I thank God for this opportunity. And oftentimes when I'm sharing my testimony, it's like I'm going back through those experiences. I need a grace. Sometimes the pain returns, the pain of the thing that I went through. But I thank God that now, after many years now, it's 23 years since I gave my life to Jesus Christ.
Wow.
And the 23 years has been amazing. I have seen the goodness of God. And also, as we start this journey, I want to tell the people that the purpose is to glorify Jesus. Not the devil, not what the devil can do or what he has done. But at the end of the day, Jesus is the winner.
Yes.
So that's why. So I'm glad that I'm here.
I'm so excited to have you here in Manchester, because as we go into the details of your testimony, I'm going to be asking you questions about, things that have happened in your past. And as you share them, there'll be things that, I'm sure lots of people may not even understand, because we have lots of people watching. People from African backgrounds may be able to relate. Some of you watching are from Western backgrounds, and you might not understand some of the depth of the occult. In fact, some of these things will blow your mind when you hear, the depth to which people engage in dark activities. But I know, just as James said, God is going to use this to glorify his name. And I also want to point this out before we go into this testimony, that right now you're a pastor. You lead a church in Uganda, and you're used in incredible ways by God in deliverance ministry, miracles, and God moving. In fact, primarily you're an intercessor. You're used in strategic. Do you just want to just give us an idea of some of the things you do right now?
I am leading a ministry called Lifeway Institute of Deliverance. What we do and what God has called me to do is to strategically train intercessors to pray and take over territories for God. So mostly I'm not pastoring the church, though I started the church. We are having other pastors pastoring the church. We're also running a Christian television station in Uganda, Worship Television, just for worship and prayer. One of the things the Lord told me to do after encountering Jesus and seeing the power of prayer. By the way, I knew the power of prayer before I became born again. I kept encountering people praying and wondering what kind of lives are they. One example, maybe to bring it out, is I was still in the occult, and I was in the city in Kampala. And I remember I got instruction from our leaders to vacate the city and stay away 70 miles away from the city and remove all our operations, because a man of God was coming in the city. And I remember we were told that if we stay in the city where that man is, his prayer would kill us all convert us. And I remember the instruction was stay out of the city 70 miles away.
Wow.
But also do not enter the city even 21 days
After.
he has left. So I was still in the occult, and I was like, what kind of power is this? Because I knew the power, I knew Satan, I knew I had been all in these kind of powers. But then we were being warned not be around that man's, where he is in the city. That man was Maurice Cerullo. So he was coming in the city, and I remember we were told, stay out of the city 70 miles away and do not enter the city another 21
That's
days.
incredible.
Because even after 21 days, his power, the effect of his power remains in the atmosphere after 21 days he has been in the city. So I knew the power of prayer. So when I came to Christ, the Lord was telling me, okay, you have seen the mistakes, the errors, because one of the work I was doing before I came to Christ was fighting churches and breaking churches. And the Lord was saying, now, you know how you broke these churches, and you know what were the errors and the mistakes and the weaknesses. So can you train an army of intercessors all over the world to bring out, to stand and take territories?
Wow.
So we are working with nations like Sri Lanka. We have work in Sri Lanka. I work in Singapore. I work in Botswana. I work in Gabon. And a few places where I've been doing.
You've been in Europe to a few places as well.
We're having a work in Munich. We're doing a great work in Munich to raise intercessors and train young people to intercede, and then they take over the nations in prayer. So one of my calling, people call me apostle, others pastor, but my call is an intercessor. That's
Amen.
So I don't know if you can call me intercessor James.
I like that. I like that. So now let's go back to the beginning. What are the earliest memories you have?
My memory, when I was around 3 years, I realized in my home I was living with my mom and my uncle, the brother to my mom, and no one else. And it was strange because I was wondering why other people don't come to our home. Later I realized that when I was 3 months old, my father and my sisters left the home and did not return because of the strange things that were happening in the house, in the home. Now, I don't know what happened, the strange things. I didn't see it unless when my mother told me my story. But when I was 3 years, the event that I can remember is the death of my uncle. And when I began now my initiation into witchcraft, when I was 3 years.
I want us to come back to the death of your uncle, but before we come back to that, can you tell us what happened before you were born? Because this is really a critical part of understanding your journey. Give us an idea of what was going on with your mom and a marriage and her desperation to have a son that laid the foundation for you to come into this world.
So I came to hear this story when I was around 12 years, to hear the story of my birth and why I was strange. Now, by the age of 12, I was already deep in the occult. I had been made a trainer of witches when I was the age of 9. At the age of 7, I was a territorial witch in charge of a territory. I had strange powers. People older than my mother could come and bow to me. Politicians, businessmen, for powers. So I kept wondering, where did I get all these powers? Where am I strange? But my mother kept taking me to different witch doctors for help to be delivered from those powers. But several times we could go to these places to the witch doctors, and the witch doctors could chase my mother away, claiming that when she takes me to them, I steal their powers. So like even the witches, the sorcerers, the diviners, even they hated me because they were, this baby has strange powers. So my mother decided to take me to a man in Pemba. Pemba is in in Tanzania in the Indian Ocean, who was it was called a sultan. So in this journey, she said, I'm going to take you to this man, and this man is going to help you. So that's when I asked. I remember we were in Dar es Salaam, we were on the port trying to get a ferry to go to Pemba. And I asked her, but Mom, tell me something. Why am I strange? And I could see when I remember I looked at my mother, and like this time she was desperate to tell me and say, please, can you not interfere with where we're going? Can we, please don't interfere. So like to convince me not to interfere, my powers, the power I had as a boy, for where we're going. So she had to tell me the story of my life, how she ended up in this. So this is what she tells me. She says, when she got married the reason she married my father, because her father had died, and her father was a rich chief, and she was the only daughter, and she had a brother, my uncle then. And when her father died, she says she knew the family in Africa. Most times the family would take over every property, so she needed protection. So by the grace of God, she says, at the time when her father died, and she's desperate, she's just a young lady, then my father started dating her. And my father, coming from a prominent family, a very known family and very strong, she thought this man, if he marries her, she'll get protection. So she gets into the family. Now, my father also was marrying her because he had been told he would find a young girl, marry early, and get as many children as possible. Because my father, being a son of a chief, son of like a prime minister, he was the only son. The brother had died. He had 7 sisters, the only son. So they were like, now you need to get a woman, get children, and raise a heir for the throne, like the chiefdom. So he marries for the purpose of getting a son. So when she married, my father and my mother, they married, she gave birth. The first child was a girl. The second child, also a girl. The third child, also a girl. Now, by the 4th child, the entire family, the chiefs, the tribe, they're all like, this woman is a waste. Because in my tribe, if you have only girls, they say you don't have children.
Wow.
So they wanted a heir. So in desperation, she went different witch doctors in different parts of the nation. And so she went, they told her, we're going to help you conceive. Then she conceived the 5th child, who was now also a girl. She went on different witch doctors, different altars, and also she conceived again a 6th child, also a girl. Wow. And she tells me that she was so desperate because she knew if she can't get a son, she will lose the marriage, and now her life will be wasted. Though at that time, she told me that someone told her that there is someone who can help her conceive a son. She had gone to all kinds of altars in Uganda and outside Uganda. She had traveled different parts and gave different sacrifices. She had the money. She could sell her properties to travel different places to help her conceive. So on this particular journey where she went, she was told to go to a forest in Tanzania. There's a place in Tanzania, northern Tanzania. There was a place. So she went there, and she realized that when she arrived at the place, they told her she had to undress and live in the forest for 7 days, going through cleansing.
Wow.
Before she appears before the person to help her. Now, before there's something I want us to note here, that was the king of darkness, but they understand the principle of consecration and cleansing.
Yeah.
Now I understand after that. So they tell her you have to undress, stay in the forest, cold, don't eat anything cooked for 7 days. So after the 7 days, you are clean enough to appear before this priest who was going to help her. So she says when she appeared after 7 days, that this priest was a woman who always lived in the forest, And she was like the chief witch of the entire continent, because all the witch doctors
I mean, the entire country.
of Africa, not continent,
Wait, she was the chief witch of the entire continent of Africa.
of Africa. So
Wow.
all the witches or the wizards or the sorcerers or the politicians, the leaders could go to her for powers. So she lived in the forest, that woman, that priest, and she had only one breast, like one breast in the middle of the chest.
So all the people that went to her to see her often went through similar rituals.
Similar
They
ritual.
have to stay in the forest for 7 days.
Naked.
Eating leaves and
Leaves and
weird stuff.
fruits for 7 days. And then after 7 days, you appear before her. That was the ritual. And it was like everyone had to go through that. So there were many people there. So she said when she appeared, when she came to her, she looked at that witch, that priest looked at my mother and said, "Go away, I will not help you." So she has been in the forest for 7 days. And now she's walking away. She says this. Now, this is what she told me. She said, as she was going away, she looked in the sky and saw a sign, something that told her that she has a son. She doesn't know what told. So she walks back to the place where they register. And she tells them, "Please, I want to go and try again." Then they tell her, "But also, if you try again, you have to go again through another 7 days." Wow. Now, the 7 days she went through, and then she went another 7 days, that's 14 days. Later, I'll be sharing with you, when I was sick, my deliverance, I had to go through the same cycle of being delivered, the 7 days and another 7 days, but now in the church setting. Because I want to tell people that salvation is free, but deliverance is a price. A price of consecration and being set apart. So she says that, so the second time, the next 7 days, she goes to appear. And when the priestess saw her, said, "You are back. You are back." Then my mother tells me, said, "Okay, I'm back, but you need to help me." Then this woman looks at her and says, "Well, I can help you, but I can see." Now, I don't know what eye they were using. I can see in the spirit you have a son, but he's very far in the rocks.
It's very far in the rock.
In the rocks. Now, that's the statement of my mother. He's far in the rocks, and there is a strange star on him. If I bring him out, he will be a problem to our powers. The only thing I can do, if you can offer sacrifices, but also if you can accept the condition we shall give you. So my mother asked, "What sacrifice?" They told her, "I have to give 7 cows for 9 months. That is 63 cows as a sacrifice." Wow. Then say, "Okay, I'll do that." Because she was desperate and she had the means. Then they tell her, "Okay,
7 cows every month for 9 months.
for 9 months. That is 63. So then the other condition was, okay, if you conceive and give birth, and this is a boy, you promise you will offer him to that woman, the princess, as a husband." She didn't know what it means. She didn't know what it meant. First tells me she didn't know that it was that. And then they told her that, okay, when you give birth, you must bring that child to the forest before the end of the first day. In other words, before the sun goes over him. She tells me she didn't know what was involved in. So she left, offered the sacrifice, returned home, she conceived. To her surprise, she gave birth to a boy. Now, the vow was to carry that boy from the city where she gave birth to the forest around 300 and maybe 400 kilometers away from the city. And that is 1975. The transport means was not that good. I don't know how she traveled. So she travels from the city in Kampala to go to fulfill the vow. What shocked her, she tells me, when she arrived at the forest, this time she didn't go through the ritual, but there was like a wedding. Hundreds of people were gathered. They knew she was coming. Gathered for what? And she realized it was now going to be the wedding of her 1-day-old son and the 60-year-old woman.
So For those of you watching, I don't know if you understand what he's just said. On the day he was born, on the day you were born, you were married to
A 60-year-old witch.
a 60-year-old witch that was the Grand Master Witch for the continent of Africa.
Of Africa.
That is mind blowing.
And you know what she told me, the wedding was conducted by the chief, the witches of the continent first, and then the bishop of the diocese also came and conducted the wedding between this 1-day-old boy and a 60-year-old woman in the forest.
Wow.
So, that was also when she told me, say, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yes." Bishop so and so, which I knew. Later I'll share how he got involved in my life, and now he moved me from that same bishop from the witchcraft to the occult, because they are different. So for her, when she reached there were all these people, the celebrations from different parts of the continent had come to the forest for the wedding. Now, according to her, that was the moment where this woman, the witch, was to transfer her powers to the boy, the 1-day-old boy. Now, I was 1-day-old. I didn't know what was happening. So after the ritual, after the ceremony, days of celebration and the wedding, the marriage is conducted, the covenant and all the sacrifices. So they tell her, you know what? Now, this child is not just a child. This is now a man. So you're not going to breastfeed him, because now he is somebody's husband already.
Wow.
And she told me that in her mind, she said, well, okay, I'll go home. These people will not be there. I have to breastfeed my child. You know, I've suffered a lot. I've paid the price. I have done all this. Like he was treasuring this child. So she returns home. When she went home, my father said, "Where have you been?" He said, "Okay, I had all this and this."
So did your father not know what she was doing?
He didn't know.
He did not know.
I don't know. Because when she left hospital, she just went to the. So my father, "Where's my wife?" She's looking around. So when she appeared, so "Where have you been?"
So he had no idea that she was this deep in her passion to find a boy or to get a son.
He didn't. The only thing he knew, my mother could disappear for days, and he didn't know where he has gone. So when she returned home, she says, I was a baby. She put me in the baby cot in the bed, then go dress up, clean up, and then come and breastfeed the child. And when she returned, she found a python coiled around the baby. Yeah, python.
Yeah.
And she says she could not come near because of the python. So she ran out. The people of the village came around. My father came around. They could see the snake, and no one could come in.
Could they not kill the snake?
I don't know why. So she says for 30 days, for 3 months, she could not come near me.
So was the python wrapped around you every day, all day, 24/7?
24/7. So she says she didn't breastfeed me. She didn't come near me. And the whole village could come and just peep in. And then there was rumors around that this woman gave birth to a child and a snake. Now, I heard those rumors when I was growing up. It was the talk of the town in their community. You know, that child is a twin. They could say, he's a twin. He was born with a snake. But my mother says, no, she didn't give birth to a snake. The snake just came when she came back to the house. Now, I don't understand how this was done. So after 3 months, my father left. Now, he picked the 6 girls and left the home. She remained alone. And because of that, my mother got a mental breakdown. So she was not like a mad woman in the community. So she's left alone with a child, a demon child, with a brother who was living with her. Now the husband, my father, and the children left, so she's deserted. So by the time I'm three years old, the only person I know is my uncle and my mother, who has no attachment with me. Why? She's mentally disturbed. She always spend all her time alone in the bedroom. There's no way. So as a child, I didn't have any attachment with her. I didn't see my sisters. I didn't meet my father. The only person now I know is my uncle, the young brother to my mother, who like was also, I don't know what happened. He was also addicted to alcohol. So he could drink and what. Now, so he tells me, I remember as the other three, when he was drinking his alcohol, he could give me because that's the only thing he had. My mother did not breastfeed me. The husband had left, deserted her. And she tells me that the day my father left, and with my sisters, is the day the snake left also. So when he left, also it left. So she remained with this child. But now she was so hurt. She was so heartbroken. And then she got into a mental breakdown because of the husband leaving her. She's alone. And so as a child, I'm in that house with only my uncle. Like all the community, the relatives, the people in the community, no one comes to our home because the talk of the community, the talk of the village is in that house,
It's a snake.
there's a snake.
Yeah.
And there is a boy who was born. So
So you had no connection with anyone else apart from your mother, who was mentally unstable, and your uncle who was, a drunkard who is struggling with alcohol addiction.
addiction.
And then you're 3 at this point.
Yeah.
Your earliest memories are around 3 and 4.
3 and 4. That's the memory I have.
And then something really tragic happened.
So the only person I know is my uncle. And one day we are staying in a small room with him. I remember I was 2 and 4. I have this memory. And then the door, someone hit the door, opened it, and my uncle came running. And then these 5 guys, they were soldiers. By that time, the nation was in a civil war. So they came into the house. I don't know why. They came chase my uncle. Then they shot him. But what surprised me that they didn't kill him. They shot him 5 times and watched him bleed. Like I'm sitting there, and they shoot, wait, they shoot, wait, they shoot, wait, they shoot, wait, they shoot, wait. And then deliberately, I remember they are shooting in parts that will not kill him instantly. So then I see these men are standing there in the room and they're watching him and he's bleeding and bleeding slowly.
And they saw you there.
Yes, they made sure that I'm there. So they bring me near him. They shoot him when I'm near him and they watch his bleeding and bleeding and bleeding. And I saw him die. So like he bled for like 2 hours. They're there watching. And when like he stopped like groaning and crying and then he slowly died. And that way I blacked out. So when I blacked out, when I woke up the next morning, the people in the community had come around to see what happened. I realized I'd become a different person. I realized by that time something had left. The human, like I was not human. From that time until I got born again at 24, my greatest joy was to cause misery. I was a sadist. I enjoyed causing trouble, killing. I enjoyed like seeing people suffer, and that could bring me joy. But I can trace that happened the day my uncle. Like now I've understood after I became a Christian, when I was going through my healing, because I got saved, but the healing took time. It took like 10 years to be healed. My healing, especially deliverance and healing, took 10 years because parts of my life were fragmented. See,
So a part of your soul.
now
Something happened to your
I
soul.
later understood that at that moment a part of my soul was trapped, and later I realized that after I got married, because when I got married, I could not relate with my wife as husband wife.
Wow.
So I went in prayer, and then the Lord took me to that moment when I was 3 years and showed me when I blacked out what happened. Because God is all-knowing. Jesus is all-knowing. So to deliver me, he had to show me what happened when I blacked out, what happened to my soul, where was I trapped. So when I got married, I married when I was 36, very late. So I was a 36-year-old man but my soul was 3 years. So I remained trapped at 3 years. But now I was a man with a body, even born again now, got married, but I could not relate with my wife as husband because I had been
Yeah, because of that trauma.
that trauma. So when that happened, my uncle was dead, and I became a different person. Those people in the occult came to my mind and say, you know what has happened to your brother? It's because we want this boy. You have to give her now officially to us. You have to surrender him to us. So she tells me, but now this one I remember it. She got me, and there is a place where this the headquarters of the occult in our nation. It's like a cave. It's like a cult, as if they believe in God but not God. They don't believe in the Bible. It's like a cult where politicians go and even religious leaders. So she takes me to this place. This place, like it's a cult, like a religion. Now, when their leaders die, they don't bury them. They embalm the bodies and pile them in a cave, the dead bodies. So she took me and handed me over to those people. Now, remember my uncle is dead. I have this pain. And now the only person I know now remaining is my mother. So she hands me over to these people who I don't know. They get me. Now, remember, I have the trauma. Just lost my uncle. Put me in a cave with dead bodies, lock it for 3 days and 3 nights without food, without water.
And how old are you at this point?
Now towards 4.
You-
Three and a
you-
half.
you-
It's just a few